Hello everybody, you're listening to J Movie Talk. Welcome back. This is episode 344 and I am officially kicking off summer Blockbuster Month. Hopefully you guys enjoyed my spotlight on Spike Lee last week to kick off the month of July. That was an episode that I've kind of been wanting to do for a while now and, talk about Spike and everything like that. So if you haven't got the chance to listen to that episode, I do recommend going back, checking out that episode. And after talking about him and everything, I really got to thinking about, there are a few Spike Lee movies that I want to cover on the podcast. Even though I've done a few so far, but there are a few more that I want to cover on the podcast. So at some point, not sure if it's going to be this year or anything, but at some point I do want to, actually dive into talking about some of Spike's other films and everything like that. But for this episode, here we are talking about 1993's Jurassic Park. To kind of go inside with the release of the newest Jurassic Park, Jurassic World, Rebirth. And everything like that. So that's one reason why I also wanted to do this for July, just to kind of coincide with a newer release and everything, kind of look back at where this franchise all began. Not just with the book, but as far as with the films and where it began and everything. So, with this episode, there's one of two ways I could have went with it. I could have actually got into just talking about the movie, but we're talking about Jurassic Park, one of the most well-known movies of all time, probably one of the most seen movies of all time and everything. So this episode, I was thinking, do it a little different, talk about a lot of things regarding the movie, but not actually go through and talk specifically about the movie scene by scene and everything like that. It is streaming on Peacock, and I believe all of the Jurassic Park / World films are actually on Peacock, so you can definitely check it out over there. And I did rewatch it for the purpose of talking about the movie on this episode, because there are a few things from the movie I will talk about and things of that nature, but overall it's just me kind of giving my overall thoughts about a lot of different things about the movie. So first we're going to talk about, of course, the man who put it all together, Mr. Steven Spielberg. He is someone that eventually I will probably do a spotlight episode on him and everything, because I do have a lot to talk about when it comes to Spielberg and his films, and also to the fact that I watched his documentary and how all of his movies, for him at least, they do carry a personal, there's a personal connection with all of his films, and listening to him talk about that and everything kind of gave a new and different perspective when it comes to him as a filmmaker, really. And if you haven't checked out his documentary, I believe it's still on HBO Max, because that's where I saw it, and everything. So I do recommend anyone, if you haven't seen his documentary, definitely check it out. And it's especially, like I say, I think if you're someone who enjoy films and things like that, like I do or whatever, I think you will really enjoy watching his documentary and him talk about a lot of his films that he made, and his thought process at the time that he was making those films and everything. Now, I did mention that Jurassic Park is based off of the book, the novel written by Michael Crichton, who has, quite a few books that were made into movies, but I don't think any other one is bigger as far as notoriety wise than Jurassic Park. And I did read the book when I was a kid. I haven't read it in a long time and everything, because I remember when like movies would come out, and if there was a book about it, I would read the book. So I would feel like, okay, well, this is how it's going to be. And I'm trying to envision it, like, oh, this is how it's probably going to be in the movie, da, da, da. And then when you watch the movie, you're like, none of that's in the movie. That character was in the book, but it's not in the movie. Or, why'd they do this and everything? So I kind of got away from like reading so much the books and the movies, and kind of look at the book as far as being one thing and the movie being a different thing, because they are different mediums and there's different ways and approaches that you can take to how you because I mean it's a book, so of course you're gonna put way more in a book than you would in a 2-hour movie, right? So I got to a point where I stopped kind of doing that and coinciding both. And then as I got older, I started to realize there's a thing of adapted screenplay. And then there is, where something is pretty much based on the novel, where it's like, yeah, we took, the idea and concept of it, but we kind of flim-flammed and switched a lot of stuff around. Or completely omitted things like Jaws, or whatever. But yeah, Michael Crichton, he's a well-known, author, and like I say, this movie, it pretty much kind of put his name on the map in a, for a different audience, and everything. And then after that, you did kind of get like a few of his other novels turned into movies as well. So the fact that this movie was released in 1993, and at the time it did become the highest grossing movie of all time, and rightfully so, because before this movie, we looked at Star Wars as being, the height of where, technology, as far as like how movies and everything were crafted and everything like that. It was Star Wars or whatever. And then in 1993, Spielberg told George Lucas, said, yeah, watch this. And I mean, of course, around this time we are getting the beginnings of the CGI, because a few years earlier, in 1991 with Terminator 2, you kind of start to introduce that whole thing of, as far as the animatronic and also the CGI dealing with the T-1000 and things of that nature. All right. But with this, you couldn't tell me in 1993, and probably a lot of kids back in 1993, or even a lot of adults, that no, dinosaurs were that these dinosaurs were fake. You couldn't tell people that, and that was the beauty. That was one of the beauties about seeing this movie back then, and even still watching it to this day, of how it's one of those movies that it is a spectacle, because you're seeing something that, like, okay, I know it's not real, but at the same time, am I sure it's not real? And when does the animatronic, and the CGI, when is it not the other? If I'm saying that right. But, when can you tell the difference between when it's CGI and when it's the animatronic? And I'm talking about in 1993 eyes. Of course, now that we've had so many movies now that use CGI and stuff like that, you can tell the difference. But in 1993, it was still a brand new thing, so your eyes was not trained to know the difference, and everything. So, like I say, I think that was one of the selling points for the movies, like dinosaurs. And then not only are they dinosaurs, but they're dinosaurs, and well, they're going to do what dinosaurs do for the most part, and that's attack. And it becomes a full-on horror movie. Oh, right. And I think that even adds more to it. So it's like, yeah, it's fun and everything in the beginning until people start getting eaten, and it's like, uh-oh, But yeah, it's definitely a movie that, changed the game. Because I always say that there are like, I want to say maybe like 5 to 10 movies that I refer to as being movies that shook up the world. And ironically, Spielberg is probably responsible for maybe, I want to say maybe 3, borderline 4 of those movies. And the movies I'm talking about would be, of course, this one, 1993, Jurassic Park, Jaws in 1975. You can kind of say either AI, the movie with Haley Joel Osment and everything, where it's basically like the saddest version of Pinocchio that you probably ever see, or whatever. And also, in that 4th spot, I probably would put Minority Report. Now, I'm pretty sure there's somebody listening to this episode and probably like, well, maybe it's this movie, that movie. And it's like, well, I'm talking more from a technical aspect as far as shaking up the world, as far as how we look at things and what came after those movies. So that's the reason why I'm singling out those particular movies. But at the same time, if anybody feels that there's some other other movies that Spielberg might have done that, or that you would consider him, that shook up the world as far as cinema is definitely hit me up. You can email me at either jmovietalk@gmail.com, or, hit me up on the socials on Instagram at JMT Podcast, or on Twitter, Threads, and everything like that. Also, if you listen on YouTube, comment down below and let me know what other movies you feel shook up the world. Not just by Spielberg, but any other, movie that you feel, that shook up the landscape of cinema, as Scorsese, says cinema and everything like that. And the fact that this movie is kind of ironic how Spielberg with this film, similar to what he did in 1975, as he ushered in what we knew as the summer blockbuster. With this movie, it helped redefine and modernize what a summer blockbuster was also. So it's like he did 2 things, again, at the same time. He's like, he is the godfather of the summer blockbuster, but then also he kind of helped reinvent how summer blockbusters, were done, and everything with this movie. Let's see. So, of course, I can't go through the episode without talking about, like a lot of characters and things like that. So, of course, the overall plot of the movie, essentially is basically, and I'm going to read the one, because there's one that's really long and it's like, what the hell is that? But the shorter version is: an industrialist invites some experts to visit the theme park of cloned dinosaurs. After a power failure, the creatures run loose, putting everyone live, including his grandchildren's, in danger. That is pretty much, the crux of the plot of this movie, where you have Mr. Hammond, who, I'm a wealthy man. I decide to, I'm bored basically. So yeah, let's bring dinosaurs back and put them in a theme park, because we're going to make some money. But before we open this theme park, I just want to, I want to test it with some of the best, scientists around, and get basically, you're going to be my think tank. And I want you to experience the park first before it's open. And then, of course, chaos ensues because of reasons, and next thing you know, you're fighting for your life, not trying to get eaten by a damn T-Rex. But so you also have this whole thing of man versus nature, because it's the whole thing of hell, if this was happening in this theme park, then what might it have been like in real life, with dinosaurs, running around, and then you got the cavemen at the same time, and it's like, okay, so how the hell does that work? Like, you just walking around trying to find some food. Next thing you know, damn triceratops or whatever come stomping around on you, or whatever, or a damn velociraptor, hide in the bushes somewhere and jump out on you, or a damn T-Rex. It's like, what the hell is that? So imagine just trying to survive in that environment, and everything. But then also too, you got the whole subplot about basically corporate greed, because the reason why the power goes out is because, of course, there's always people trying to, be greedy and also want to put stuff on the black market, basically. So, and that was the whole thing of what Dennis Nedry, and Wayne Knight's character, what he's trying to do. So, of course, he shuts down the power so he can do his villainy and, try to get, a bunch of the samples off the island. But because of reasons, thankfully, he ends up, getting lost in this damn tsunami that's hitting the island at the same time, and he ends up not making it to his destination. I'll just put it like that. And then the whole thing of there is a back and forth of how not only do our main characters view things, because you just have Hammond as this, he's just this industrialist man thinking like, oh, this is nice. This is, we're gonna give people an experience and it'll be nice and this, that, and that. It's like, oh, okay. That's his whole point of view on it. Whether he truly believes it or not, that's kind of to be debatable, because there's that whole dinner scene where it's him along with Grant, Ellie, and, Malcolm and the lawyer, where they're kind of talking about everything, and like he isn't really liking a lot of what's being said because it kind of shatters his vision for what Jurassic Park is supposed to be. And also too, the different philosophies of Ian Malcolm, also with Dr. Alan Grant, and how there is kind of a tug of war as far as how they view things and everything. Because in this movie, Ian Malcolm is kind of, he's a genius, but also he's very relaxed, and he's very brazen in a way, up until he ends up riding on the damn nose of a damn T-Rex and and everything. And then his whole philosophy kind of changes, especially in the second movie, and everything like that. But he also, but at the same time, he's like the one who's a realist. He kind of says a lot of what the audience is thinking, because there's this whole thing of God made man, God made dinosaur, God made man, God extinct dinosaur, man makes dinosaur kills man, type of thing. And it's like he said like yeah, this is a bad idea, but he said it in his Ian Malcolm type of way. And everything, which, like I say, he has probably like one of the best thought process of like anybody in the movie, really, because Alan Grant is almost at a point of where it's like, man, yeah, I'm just out here, because you said you're gonna fund my next dig or whatever, so yeah, I'm here along for the ride or whatever, until he starts seeing the dinosaurs and everything, and he then has a stroke when he sees it, and then how he's kind of a curmudgeon old, I won't say old man, he's more like middle age or whatever, and just until he has to, kind of step up and be the hero, which I do enjoy, like his overall arc in the movie, which I'll talk more about that in a little bit. But so I mean, I kind of start talking about the characters, so just kind of go a little bit through at least our main crux characters or whatever. So like I said, you have Sam Neill as Dr. Alan Grant. I mean, he becomes like the de facto like father figure ish in the movie to the kids in the movie and everything, even though early in the movie it's like noted that he doesn't really like kids. So it's kind of funny that he's the one who spends the biggest amount of time with these kids, because he's saving their lives, and not only his own life, but he has to save their lives as well, and they grow attached to him even more than what we get at the beginning. Because even at the very beginning, when they first get to the island and everything, and they're walking, they're around, Tim is, just, he read his books and he just, asking him a million questions and stuff like this. And Grant's like, somebody get this damn kid away from me or whatever. And then when Lex, like the whole thing, when they're going, when they see the dinosaur that's laid out in the field, and they go walking out there, and when she falls and he picks her up, and he grabs her by the hand and picks her up, and how she doesn't release his hand, and he's looking like, you want to let my hand go? Like, is that what we doing? Like, what are we doing right now? And like after, the whole thing where the T-Rex escapes, and then he basically has to save them Tim unfortunately gets it the worst in this movie, even though he doesn't die, but boy, that boy should have definitely died at least about 5-6 times in this movie. But when the Jeep gets tossed over the cliff and everything, which is, I will always say that is the only scene that kind of takes me out of the movie, because where the hell does this mysterious cliff come from? Because it's the same side that the dinosaur came from, the T-Rex, at least when it escapes, and there was no cliff, it was flat ground. But then mysteriously, all of a sudden, there's like this, almost 50-foot cliff that's here, and it's like, where the hell did this cliff come from? But we're not really supposed to focus on that so much. But it is what it is, right? But Tim, unfortunately, he takes he goes down the hard way, where Lex and everything, because she will not release Grant, because she even choking him. And it's funny because she do start choking him, right? He even said, "You're choking me," and everything, as they trying to avoid being crushed by this freaking Jeep that the T-Rex is pushing over the side of the cliff, and also trying not to get eaten by this damn thing. But yeah, he becomes like the father figure to these kids out there. Laura Dern as Ellie Sattler. She, actually, I do like her character in this, and I feel like she kind of gets the short end of the stick to a degree in this. Well, not in this movie, but not until she returns in Dominion, which is years later. But in this movie, she gets to do some of the physical stuff too. I mean, that whole sequence with her out there trying to turn the power back on after Mr. Arnold, good old Samuel L. Jackson, it mysteriously disappears and ends up dead, and everything, which we don't see, which I've always been kind of pissed about that we don't actually see his death. He's the only character of note that he dies, but we don't actually see. He just randomly leaves, and then we just get this severed arm that pops up, and we're just supposed to assume that he's dead. And it's like, well, there was no thing of, oh, okay, well, whatever. It's like, we don't get it. And I always chuck it up to, well, maybe he had to leave to go film Patriot Games, and they just had to write him out of the movie some type of way, because Patriot Games does come out the same year as this, and I've always assumed that, but I could be wrong. But anyway, Laura Dern, I think she does a good job here. The whole thing about whether her and Alan Grant are together, and how she kind of makes little jokes about the fact that, yeah, Alan doesn't like kids, but kids for some reason they do love him, even though he don't like kids. And how Malcolm is kind of macking on her in the Jeep and everything, and then, like I say, when things get crazy, how she kind of steps up, and she gets to fight off a damn raptor herself, and everything like that. But of the three, she does kind of get she kind of gets the short end as the series progresses, until she's brought back in Jurassic World Dominion, and everything. And then, of course, Jeff Goldblum as Dr. Ian Malcolm. It's like when you think about the first couple of Jurassic Park movies, because I always thought it was interesting how the first three movies they kind of split them between, well, Ian Malcolm, they all are together in the first movie. Malcolm gets his solo movie with another group, and then Alan Grant gets his solo movie with the third movie in part 3, and then they don't all come back together again until Dominion, even though they're all out there and everything. And I always thought it was kind of interesting that with the second movie that Spielberg decided to focus on Malcolm more so than even Dr. Grant, even though Grant does come back for the third movie. But I always thought it was interesting that Spielberg only he put the focus on Malcolm in the second movie. And I mean, of the three characters, he is the more kind of, I want to say he's the more interesting of the characters, because I mean, it's Jeff Goldblum, but he's cool Jeff Goldblum, and he's always, see, but that's the thing about Goldblum, is that he's always kind of been this cool kind of brazen type dude in just about everything he's been in, with the exception of Deep Cover. If anyone who's ever seen the movie Deep Cover, where he plays a true no good villain, and it's the only movie he plays that type of character. I mean, yeah, he shows up at the beginning of the first Death Wish movie in his younger career, but when he became a movie star, Jeff Goldblum, that is like the only time you ever see him as a through just real piece of shit, no good character. And I always wondered, like, how did they get him to play that villain type role? And the fact that that movie is only a couple of years before Jurassic Park or whatever. But no, he I mean, he is my favorite character in the movie, because he says a lot of what the audience is kind of thinking to a degree. And he does bring quite a bit of the comic relief up until a certain point, until he kind of gets taken out and he's pretty much on the sidelines. But yeah, he's like, he's the character that people, I think, kind of gravitate a lot to. And maybe I'm answering my own question of saying why Spielberg decided to focus on him in the second movie. But even in the second movie, that version of Ian Malcolm is a little different from the version that we get in the first movie. So, yeah. And then, of course, we have Mr. John Hammond himself, Richard Attenborough. At that point, he was a legendary actor, had been in The Great Escape and a lot of different movies at the time. But but at the surface, he's like, he just a nice old man who wants to have something for the kids, and everything. He's a dreamer. But it's like that dreamer side of him is also battling the realist side of him. And it's almost like the realistic side, when he's confronted about, I don't think this is a good idea, that dreamer side kind of fights back. And, up until he starts to realize, like, I think I made a mistake with this, and now I didn't put my grandchildren in harm's way and everything. But I think he does a very good job too of, like, he kind of snaps out of that whole dreamer phase once, like, the realization is like, no, these dinosaurs are dangerous creatures. And not just dinosaurs, but I think it also is a critique on how zoos and things like that are viewed and everything. It's like, they're enclosed and everything like that, but what happens when the power shuts down and these things, these animals get loose and nature, takes over? Because even though they're enclosed and everything, but their natural instinct is still there or whatever. And I always say, like, when you go to the zoo, you see that lion that's just chilling, over somewhere, getting some sun or underneath the tree or whatever. Like, don't get fooled by that, because it's like, I'm pretty sure that lion's probably thinking, like, if I could get my hands on any of y'all, I put on a real show and everything. The Dr. Hammond, Mr. Hammond, I should say, is he plays an interesting role. And then to some degree, I wouldn't say that he's necessarily a villain, because he's not, but he is somewhat of an antagonist or villain adjacent, because he's the reason why Jurassic Park is even a thing, possibility, and why people keep trying to make this work, even though I would say this, if this happened in real life, there would be no way in hell that there would be an actual functioning theme park by the time we get to Jurassic World. Because looking at what happened here, people got killed and everything like that. But at the same time, I guess greed and profitability, and it's like, people don't care that there was a few deaths or whatever. Like, yeah, let's make it so, basically. And everything. So one of the biggest things, of course, about this movie is the use of CGI. And then, of course, the combination of who I consider one of the best special effects artists, and that is one Mr. Stan Winston, with the animatronics that him and his team, they created for this movie. And like I was saying earlier about how the fact that in 1993 eyes, it's hard to tell when it's not CGI and when it's just the animatronic, because you swear that it's all one and the same and everything. And of course, like I say, it was groundbreaking stuff that they were doing in 1993. Now we're kind of, spoiled to the fact of, CGI and everything like that. And in a lot of ways, CGI has replaced a lot of, what guys like Stan Winston and Tom Savini and Rob Bottin, people like that, what they have, they use, their hands and they created things, right? Well, even though CGI, I feel like this is like the perfect version of how to use CGI. Use it when it's absolutely necessary, but you rely on, what the special effects team is making. It shouldn't be the other way around. But that's just me, because I've always been someone, and I've always continued to be someone who practical effects over CGI all day. That's just me. And I don't care if it looks kind of, if the practical effect, all you can tell is, okay, that's fine. But still, is the fact that these people actually, with their hands and the tools that they have, they created something, opposed to digitally, creating something and saying, this makes it look better. Because a lot of times the CGI doesn't always make the effect look better. So that's why I'm always team practical effect. And also too, watching this movie again, like I say, for this episode and everything, it just shows that the dinosaurs in this movie, they still look really damn good. And like I say, from a visual aspect of that, it's just great to see. And you was, like I say, again, you swear that these things were actually real, and everything. And the fact that Spielberg does a really good job of balancing suspense, like with the whole thing of them sitting there they're in the two Jeeps and everything, and it's just building suspense. Something's going to happen. You just don't know what or when exactly is going to happen, but you're kind of experiencing it the same way that the characters are experiencing it, especially Alan Grant and Ian Malcolm in their Jeep. Like, because at first, they just sit there, they're kind of just being relaxed and everything like that. And then when the cables of the start to break, and it's like, type of situation. And even, I would say, Spielberg, even in a way, now I don't know if this was on purpose or if it was like a happy accident, he kind of does his own Predator type of situation when the main wrangler, hunter, whatever he is, where he thinks that he's getting the drop on the raptor, but the raptor actually outsmarts him and comes from the side, and he's like, clever girl, and then she attacks him and he gets murdered and everything. That whole sequence kind of adds a lot of suspense and the horror aspect, because again, you are fighting for your lives against these damn animals that they just want to eat you, and everything. For the most part, the ones that are carnivores, of course, they just want to eat you. And then of course that sequence with Grant and the kids when they have to get over the electrical fence before Ellie turns on the power, right there, you kind of just like, are they gonna make it? And of course, Tim unfortunately gets electrocuted and flies like 20 feet and everything. And it's like, why did they put that kid through so much hell in this movie? it's not funny, but at the same time it kind of is, because it's like he goes through literal hell. He almost gets crushed inside the Jeep when the T-Rex turns it over. He gets tossed over a cliff inside the Jeep into some trees. He gets electrocuted on the fence. He has to like run for his limping life from this T-Rex and everything. I mean, not T-Rex, but Velociraptor, when they're in the kitchen with him and Lex trying to, stay quiet as possible from the Raptors when they show up and everything. It's like all the bad stuff for the most part happens to that kid. And it's like, imagine being that kid and going through all that and surviving. It's like, you better grow up to do something that's going to change the world, because there's no reason for him to have went through that type of hell or whatever. And then also the whole like wondrous aspect, because in the beginning it is very wondrous and whimsical, and the way Hammond is, he's building it up like this is a Walt Disney type of situation, like a Disney type situation, and Disneyland type situation, whatever, and everything, and then until things completely go sideways and all of that. But yeah, Spielberg, he does a very good job, and he's always done a great job of kind of, being able to get, certain emotion, or, have that whimsical thing in certain of his movies, even certain movies of his that don't necessarily need it, like Empire of the Sun. There's a few moments in that movie that are whimsical, in a way, in a sad, tragic type of way, especially the scene with Jim out with him and the people. They walk out to the stadium, and the whole thing about when Mrs. Victor dies, and he's like, he can bring her back, and then it's the atomic bomb, and then the wave, it goes over, and he's thinking that that's her soul going to heaven, but in reality that's them dropping the freaking atomic bomb hundreds of miles away. But the blast radio, it just, that feeder band comes out over the field and everything, but to him he's thinking one thing when in reality it was something completely different. Spielberg has always been very good at putting that type of, kind of getting that type of emotion with audiences. And like I say, when you listen to him talk about his movies in his documentary, you understand why he does it and why it works in a lot of his movies. And he's like one of like the few directors who can do that in a very convincing way. And Jurassic Park is one of those movies where you go through a range of emotion. The tense moments are very suspenseful. The horrific moments are very horrific. And then those wondrous moments at the beginning when you first get into Jurassic Park, which kind of goes to the line of what Ian Malcolm says in the second movie. It's like, yeah, it's all ooh and ah until danger, basically happens and everything. It's like a false sense of security in a way, and everything. So, I mean, I've been talking quite a bit about different things about the movie, and I have mentioned about the whole T-Rex breaking out, sequence, which is like, when you think about this movie, that sequence is like one of the biggest from this movie, because it has a wide range of everything in it. As a kid, it did scare me, because it's like, because I put myself in the kid's shoes, and it's like, yeah, imagine you being a kid having to see this, and then this no good lawyer that's in the damn Jeep with you, he jumps out and runs over to the bathroom, and like Lex says, he left us and everything. And then when you actually see the freaking T-Rex, bursting through and everything, and then trying to attack you, but at the same time, it's like, why couldn't they just turn that freaking flashlight off? Because Lex is telling him, turn the light off. But at that point, it was too late and everything. But like I said, that's one of the best sequences, and probably one of the best sequences in a movie, period, because you're just witnessing what's happening. Similar to what Dr. Grant and Malcolm are doing. They just sit in the Jeep, they kind of just witnessing what's happening until they decide to take action, and everything. The Raptors in the kitchen sequence, as they're trying to find Tim and Lex And it just shows like how smart the Raptors are, because earlier in the movie, when Grant is at his dig site, that's one thing that's kind of brought up. And then throughout the course of all of the movies, it's kind of shown like the Raptors are very smart animals. And I do like the evolution of how the Raptors, they start out, of course, as like the villains, for the most part. And even in the end, the T-Rex in a way kind of becomes I won't say an anti-hero, but almost like a hero-ish, as the T-Rex does save the humans from the Raptors, which is wild. And that same T-Rex actually appears throughout the rest of the series. You just have to really notice it, and everything. And I do like how they bring, because I think it's her. I think, because I could be wrong on this, but I do believe that they said that all of the dinosaurs are female, or whatever. I could be wrong by saying that, but I could have swore I heard that in one of the movies in regards to the dinosaurs. But I always like how the original T-Rex is brought back in the first Jurassic World with Bryce Dallas Howard's character, having to open the thing like, no, I need your help, type of situation. And then of course when he comes back in the next one, which is always that scene is always sad with when the damn volcano is erupting and the damn dinosaurs are running for their lives, and good old OG T-Rex does his iconic roar. And then when that blast comes, it's like, oh hell, let me get the hell out of here. This is a little bit too much for me, type of situation. But I always like how they kind of continuously bring back the original, the OG T-Rex, just to let people know, like, no, it's still out there, and everything. And then also too, the scene when they first see the Brachiosaurus and everything, because again, it's just the way Spielberg films scenes and stuff like that. And it's like, that's a great freaking, because again, you don't know if that's a real Brachiosaurus or if it's just an animatronic, because like I say, looking at it from 1993's eyes, you just don't know. And then of course, John Williams and his iconic score also just adds to what makes this movie so great. And just like Spielberg with the filmmaking and everything like that, John Williams with his scores and movies, how it adds to the whimsical, or it adds to the suspense and the horror of everything. I mean, with John Williams and Spielberg, they work very well together when it comes to, Spielberg set the scenes up and Williams, putting his scores on top of, the scenes. Is like they just work together. They're like peas and carrots, as Forrest Gump would say, and everything like that. And then also too, I did mention earlier about how Jurassic Park, it redefined the blockbusters in the 90s, because think about it, what we were getting of blockbusters before 1993 is completely different of what we would get after, because when you look at quite a few of the movies that come after, like Independence Day, in different movies or whatever that come out after Jurassic Park, it really changed the game once again. Just like in 75, look at the type of big blockbuster type movies that would follow suit after Jaws, and everything. And like I say, just again, how Spielberg crafts his movies and just elicit that type of response from audiences, and that's what people wanted, and everything, and we got it. And now look at how blockbusters are kind of done. Unfortunately, it's more geared towards Marvel, the MCU basically, and everything, and how blockbusters do that. But then when you have a movie like Sinners come along, and I feel like it's going to help redefine what blockbusters are and everything, because that movie is a blockbuster, and it's gonna help redefine what a blockbuster is going forward, I feel like. And just like with Spielberg and his movies, he changed the game. And I feel like Sinners, in a way, is kind of help reunite that of what we used to get as far as like blockbusters and everything, which is a good thing, because we need more movies that are, even though they can be looked at as fantasy, but at the same time have a lot of realism to them. And that is something I think that is missing from a lot of the big budget tent poles blockbuster type movies, that yeah, they might cost a lot of money, they might this, that, and the third, but how realistic are they to a degree and everything. And this movie, it does do the unfortunate thing of influencing the future of CGI heavy films, but at the same time, like I say, practical effect is to me is still really good, whereas CGI, it should just be a help to the practical effect. It should not be the sole purpose of the effect in a movie. And unfortunately, you did have quite a bit of people, kind of similar to like the corporate greed within Jurassic Park. You had the greed of, oh, well, we can just CGI the hell out of things. And it's like, yeah, you can, but is it really that good being like that? And there are some CGI heavy movies that work, and then there's a lot more that don't and everything. So one of the things about Jurassic Park 2 is that in 1993, I don't think they thought that it was going to span a complete franchise and sequels and then a spin-off series as well. And the fact that here we are in 2025, we have just the newest release of Jurassic World Rebirth, all these years later and everything. I don't think they thought at that time that this is where it would be now, but it's still here. And I mean, some of the sequels are good and some of them are not, but that's all for interpretation. Just I think pretty much which ones do you gravitate towards and which ones you don't, because I've been seeing, especially with the release of Rebirth, that people they're going back and they're looking and ranking the franchise and stuff like this, and like, oh, well, this movie is this and this movie. But I feel like all of them are good in their own rights. It just all depends on what you as someone that's watching it, what exactly are you looking for? Because at the end of the day, they are movies about dinosaurs. But at the same time, what are you looking for within that? What are you getting out of it? I mean, for me personally, the first one, which is this one, is still the best one. I enjoy parts of the second one. The third one has somewhat grown on me. I used to not like the third one so much, but it has somewhat grown on me. I do kind of feel like Alan Grant. I do relate to his character quite a bit in that movie. And William H. Macy does a very good job of auditioning for Geppetto with that damn mustache that he has. Like I said, it has its moments. And then, I mean, the Jurassic World movies, I mean, I feel like they are I will put it like this. I think that they did a good job of ushering in a younger, new group and everything. And then they do bring back and pay homage to the OG cast with Dominion. But for the most part, I understand and I did appreciate that they did go, a different route to a degree, but also they acknowledge and everything with the original, and then they bring them all together. Now, I haven't seen Rebirth yet. I do want to see it because, I mean, it's Scarlett Johansson doing Scarlett Johansson things, and then you got Mahershala Ali and everything in it, and I need to see this damn dinosaur that looked like it literally burst through a portal from hell, and everything. So I do plan on seeing it, and everything like that. But I mean, is it for you as and this is something I want to ask the listener, you guys, all two of you. I want to ask, is the franchise, is it getting diminishing returns, or is it a continued fun watch as they continue to make Jurassic Park / world movies, and everything? And then as we kind of wind this episode down, I will always look at Jurassic Park as being one of the first summer blockbusters that I saw as a kid, because like I said, the movie came out when I was 9 years old, and everything. So yeah, it is one of those movies that I did see at the movie theater. I owned it on VHS. I own it on DVD. Well, Blu-ray actually, but yeah, it's always been a staple for me over the years, that, you know, ever since I was a kid. So it's one of those movies that I revisit every so often. It still remains a timeless classic to me, and everything, because of everything I pretty much talked about in this episode. It's just a fun movie. I mean, yeah, there's horror elements to it, but it's still overall, it's a fun type of a movie, and everything. So that's one reason why I enjoy it as much as I do. And it's ironic, I did kind of mention what the next episode's movie is going to be, which is 1996 Independence Day, which is a movie that follows this blockbuster. And I don't think we get Independence Day necessarily without Jurassic Park, because again, practical effects with CGI and everything. So yeah, I feel like Independence Day probably doesn't happen without the success of Jurassic Park, really. Which I will talk more about that when I do that episode. But I do have a overall question for you guys and everything. So the question for this episode is, what does Jurassic Park rank in your all-time summer movies list? Not just Jurassic Park movies, but like as far as summer blockbusters of all time. Where do you put it? Me, I still feel like it's a top 5, simply for the fact of it was the modern, it redefined what the modern blockbuster was. 75 with Jaws is what kicked off the original blockbuster, but 1993, it changed the game to what the modernized version. Every big blockbuster movie up to a certain point modeled its way after Jurassic Park. So that's why for me, it's always going to be top 5 for me. So yeah, like I said earlier, you can let me know if you listen on YouTube. Comment down below what you feel is what does this movie rank as far as your summer blockbusters. You can email me at jmovietalk@gmail.com as well. Like that, let me know what you guys think. And yeah, so that is pretty much it for this episode. I want to thank you guys for listening as always. Of course, you can follow me on the socials, whether it's on Threads at the J Giles or J Movie Talk, both on Threads, on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. Either the movie page, J Movie Talk, or our personal page, the J Giles. On YouTube as well, J Movie Talk is over on YouTube. You know, like, comment, subscribe. You know, comments are very much appreciated. Share it with your friends, your family, strangers, whatever, and everything like that. You can listen to all the episodes, part of TV Zone Podcast Network, wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts at. You can find TV Zone Podcast, not that, and check out all the movie talk episodes, well, the other shows that are part of the TV Zone Podcast Network as well. Again, thank you all for listening. I will be back continuing on Summer Blockbuster Month with episode 345, where I will be talking about Independence Day. So until next time, peace.